Hi everybody. If you're thinking about trying to buy the house you're renting from your landlord, you're probably focusing on all the advantages to you. But you should also look at the disadvantages to you before deciding whether to move forward with your idea and pitch it to your landlord. First, let's look at the advantages to you, the tenant, the renter, the potential buyer. 1. You may be able to negotiate a better price with your landlord. This is especially true if your landlord isn't paying for any real estate agents. Not paying real estate agent commissions could save your landlord 5, 6, or whatever percent of the home's entire value. That could give your landlord a lot more leeway when negotiating price with you. It may. 2, you don't have to move. Moving is an enormous pain in the neck. It's expensive and it's disruptive to the family, especially if you have kids and they have to move to new schools. I've read that moving is the third most stressful thing in life, behind death in the family and divorce. Just the thought of moving makes some people put off buying homes. 3, you already know the commute times. One of the biggest regrets new home buyers have is buying homes that are too far from work. They may buy homes on the outskirts of town because they get a lot more house for the money out there, but the commute to work is longer and the commute never gets any shorter. For this house, you already know the commute times very well and you know they're okay for you. 4, you already know the general condition of the house. Another common complaint of new home buyers is the house is in worse physical condition than they knew when they bought it. They had a lot of big, unexpected expenses right after they bought the place. You're at a huge advantage here because you already live there. You know the general condition and how well or how poorly it's been taken care of. You still need to get a professional home inspection before you buy it for sure, but living there means you know a ton more about the condition of the home. 5, you already know the neighborhood. You know how convenient or how inconvenient it is to go shopping. You know how much noise the neighborhood gets from nearby roads, shopping centers, schools, stadiums. If you bought a different house in a different neighborhood, you wouldn't know all those things as well, and you might get an unpleasant surprise after buying it. 6, you already know the neighbors. Another disaster story for new homeowners is finding out they have bad neighbors. Maybe it's a constantly barking dog or loud music or unkept yard. 7, you know the landlord. You probably know your landlord at least a bit and you know how much you can trust your landlord. If they treated you fairly as a renter, they'll probably treat you fairly as a buyer. And if your landlord is a jerk, you know that going in. You know to be extra careful to protect yourself from being taken advantage of. 8, owning can be cheaper than renting. It depends on a lot of things, including how you slice the numbers, but sometimes owning is actually cheaper than renting. Overall, buying from your landlord is kind of like trying out a house before you buy it. That's a huge advantage. Now let's look at the disadvantages to you, the renter, of buying from your landlord. 1, you haven't looked at other homes. You may hate the idea of moving, but once you know how much you can afford, you should really look around at other homes for sale and see what you can buy. You might find out you can afford to buy a house that suits your needs better than the one you're currently renting. 2, you may not be ready to buy any house yet. Particularly if your landlord has approached you out of the blue about buying, make sure you're ready to buy a home now. Any home. Use rent versus buy calculators or how much can I afford calculators online to dive into the pros and cons of buying a house now. Even if an online calculator or mortgage loan officer says you can afford a mortgage payment of X number of dollars a month, do you really want to spend that much money a month? Some websites show you the maximum amount you can borrow, but most people don't go up to the maximum loan amount when they buy a home. You probably shouldn't either. 3, you haven't considered the total cost of owning a home. Another common complaint of first-time home buyers is that they're house poor. They didn't expect repairs and maintenance to be so expensive. Or maybe they got unlucky and the furnace or air conditioner conked out right after they bought the place. 4, you may not live there long enough. Can you see yourself living in the house for at least 5 years? 10 years would be a lot better. Since you've probably never sold a home before, you may not realize that it's really expensive to sell a house. In normal times with normal appreciation, you have to own a home for 2 or 3 years before you can even break even. And that's in normal times, and it doesn't include closing costs you paid when you originally bought the house. When appreciation is slow, it takes more than 2 or 3 years before you can sell and break even. So those are the pros and cons for you. Knowing the house, not having to move, and the possibility of getting a better price are awesome. But be sure you're ready to buy any house now, and you've looked around and to see if there's anything better out there that you can afford to buy. If you've done all of that, you're ready to move forward. But before you move forward, let's look at the advantages and disadvantages to your landlord. Let's get into their heads a little bit.